The owner of a sports team coming together with city officials to find a solution where everyone wins, where everyone can be happy, all while avoiding a totally unnecessary relocation. Nope, this is not some fever dream. It's not some weird sports ownership fan fiction. It actually happened. In a bout of common sense that even Thomas Paine would be proud of, Washington D.C. will be keeping the Wizards and Capitals after an agreement was reached between the city and Ted Leonsis. I'm talking about actual Thomas Paine, by the way, not the weird car shield caricature of him.
If you're afraid to offend, you can't be honest. That's Thomas Paine.
The Wizards and Capitals finding a way to stay in Washington, D.C. is a rare win for sports fans, something that is much needed in this day and age. Their agreement is by no means perfect, but then again, no compromise is. Instead, we got a city and team putting aside their differences to make fans a priority. The absurdity of it all. How dare each side not bunker down in its position and then double, triple, even quadrupling down on their terrible decision. The Washington Wizards may not be all that successful on the basketball court, although for their part on the ice, the Capitals are wildly successful, having qualified for the postseason in like 32 out of the past 40 years, a stat you probably wouldn't even realize. Regardless of that though, the real winners here, the ones that are coming out on top, are fans in the Washington D.C. metro area, because after all, they get to keep their teams in their city. After all of the effort to get the Wizards and Capitals to Washington, D.C. proper, not out in the sticks in Landover, Maryland with nothing else around it, this is very much a welcome sight. There is nothing wrong with admitting you have made a mistake and then taking steps to rectify what was done. I know in modern times it's seen as a sign of weakness or an embarrassment by weak-minded fools who have long since stopped thinking rationally, that somehow saying you've made a mistake and then trying to correct that mistake is being in the wrong somehow, which is totally not the case. To that end, I think DC Mayor Muriel Bowser, the City Council, and the Wiz and Caps owner Ted Leonsis all deserve a lot of plaudits here in finding a solution that everyone can be happy with. Correction, most people can be happy with. Look, no matter what you do in life, some people are still going to be pissy about it, and there are going to be those pissy about the decision for the local Washington, D.C. government to pay for these renovations to keep the team in town, but that's just life. Someone's always got to be mad about something. Let's not get distracted by that though. The easy thing in this scenario, in this saga between Washington, D.C. and the monumental sports and entertainment group, would have been for both parties, both sides, just to become firmly entrenched into their position. Instead of being open-minded, instead of being willing to engage in a dialogue, they could have just tried to force things through. In other words, they could have just sat around playing the blame game and trying to pin this on the other side, really just dragging each other through the mud in the media while doing nothing constructive to solve anything. Obviously, there were moments when things became contentious between the two sides, but it never really got to a point of no return. Apparently, there was always a dialogue between Leonsis and the city. They were always discussing things, seeing how it was going to play out, really just working on a solution. What you have here is that the two sides never became adversaries. They never really started working against one another, conspiring against one another. It never became this sort of versus, this head-to-head battle, if you will. Instead, it was just always two parties trying to see what was going on. That is ultimately how they figured out a way for the Wizards and the Capitals to stay in Washington, D.C. Everyone was really focused on a solution, listening to what the other side had to say, and then finding proposals, a collaboration between two parties, which these negotiations should always be about. That brings me to a very important part here. Why do these talks between cities, counties, districts, states, whatever the case may be, and sports owners and their teams always seemingly start at this point, the nuclear option? We have seen it on so many occasions over the past 2 years. If local bodies don't cave into every last demand a sports team wants, a sports owner wants, they immediately throw out the relocation word and it becomes a huge scene. All it does is like hitting red alert or panic. It sends everyone into a tizzy. Instead of just talking, instead of just working things out, you've got to hit that nuclear button and just nuke everything, nuke all of the talks, and just push it to this point of no return. That freaking sucks. And the ones who bear the burden of this suctitude are fans. They're the ones who have to deal with their beloved team talking about leaving, flirting with other cities. That is just such an awful thing to put fans through. The thing is, without these fans, without these folks supporting the team, there's really nothing there. Like, no one's playing sports in front of no one. Whether it's on television, in person, whatever the case may be. So why teams, why sports owners want to drag fans over the coals during these relocation talks, these new stadium negotiations? It's just nonsense. It's ridiculous. You even have these legacy franchises, these teams that have been in one location and that have become sort of ingrained as part of the city itself, using this tactic, using this move. Like, take the Kansas City Chiefs, for instance. For them to hint at relocation or threaten it or whatever you want to describe their actions, it's preposterous. Sports teams love using the family metaphor, how everyone involved, all stakeholders, they're just part of one big old family, including those fans. They are an equal part of this. The thing is, though, I have never had a family member threaten to move if the rest of the family didn't chip in to buy them a brand new house. Maybe I'm just weird in that way. You tell me, because I don't think that's something families do. Another interesting takeaway from this whole Washington D.C. saga over the Wiz and Caps is that plans, renderings, press conferences, and the like, they are all totally meaningless. It's just a dog and pony show. It's all an attempt to make it work, to make a relocation happen. But really, it just doesn't matter. Until a team shows up in a city and starts playing there, nothing is finalized, nothing is firm. It's all moving parts, everyone just trying to make their way in this world. This, of course, is why the Oakland A's relocation to Las Vegas is anything but solid. There's just nothing there that leads you to believe this is a workable solution. You know, Alexandria, it had renderings, it had a huge press conference with the governor, and look what it's going to have to show for it. Absolutely nothing. You know, you can sit there and say, oh, the A's are guaranteed to move to Las Vegas. How are they guaranteed to move to Las Vegas? I just don't see it. Just like with the Wizards, there's always a chance, assuming both sides are talking and both sides are willing to negotiate, willing to have constructive conversations, and aren't just going to butt heads and be adversaries. That is an issue I think Oakland is really suffering from right now, but I don't want to get into that. Instead, I would prefer to salute Ted Leonsis, Mayor Bowser, and everyone who made sure the Wizards and Capitals will be staying in Washington, D.C. at least until 2050, probably beyond though. I want to salute them for using common sense in an era where doing such a thing is just almost ridiculed at times. They really got together, they admitted their mistake, and they took steps to correct it. That is perhaps one of the most noble things of all. It really is a rare win in the world of sports when everyone is acting out of just passionate greed and doing what's best for them. Yeah, does this help Ted Leonsis? Does this agreement benefit the Wizards and Capitals? Absolutely. That's just how it's going to work. At the same time, though, you can definitely see what Washington, D.C. is getting out of it, what the local population is getting out of it. It is a win-win. Here's hoping that more cities and sports teams can get together, have these difficult but constructive dialogues, and find workable solutions. And hopefully they can do so without needing to push the nuclear button and start threatening relocation and talking to other cities. These negotiations obviously are not easy to have and not easy to execute, but usually, if you're willing to work hard on it and you're willing to compromise, you can find a middle ground. Talks between cities and city councils and states and local governments and these sports owners, they should not be carried out like hostage agreements, like hostage talks, which they almost always do. Teams come in and say, like, we're holding this sports team hostage. What do you want to do to save it? And that's not how that should play out.
Give me back my son!
So in that regard, I think what happened in Washington, D.C. worked out for the best. Obviously, there were mistakes made, but those mistakes were admitted to and corrected, which means at the end of the day, Washington, D.C. sports fans are the real winners here. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to know a little bit more about the NBA team that, as they were relocating, tried to sell its team name and mascot, well, the video in the upper right-hand corner of your screen is the place to go. Until next time, I am Cheyenne Hollis. This is The Touchback, and as always, hashtag take it out to the 25.
Don't you understand English, you useless piece of shit? No money, none!